What? Well, that's not scientific. I'm a skeptic. Skepticism is going to get you reincarnated, my friend. I don't know about you, but I'm freaking done. Bring on the magic powers, man. If the universe is made out of a Merkaba that built space and time, and you are made out of that Merkaba, then guess what? The basic qualities that you have, meaning that you're alive, I think everybody here is alive. Looks like everybody's alive. Nobody's actually tranced out from like tripping out on what I'm saying already. That'll happen later. You watch the heads, they'll just... Since you are alive and since you are the universe, therefore the universe is alive. It's a nice little logical syllogism we can play with. So, biological life is going to just spring out wherever and however it can, and this was discovered by a Nobel Prize-winning biologist from France named Dr. Luc Montagnier. In 2011, you can see how smart he is here. He's got all kinds of test tubes and shit around him. That's a good sign. Anybody that can look at you condescendingly over the top of his glasses like a librarian, he's got it down. Here's what he did. He takes a tube of water, look at that tube in the middle there, with DNA in it, trace amounts of DNA, and then he surrounds it with an electrical coil inside that little can, and for 18 hours he energizes the tube with the DNA in it and water, and then puts another hermetically sealed test tube next to it that's got nothing but water in it. So you with me so far? 2 tubes, one's got DNA, one does not. Cook them for 18 hours with 7 hertz, which is the base frequency of electromagnetic energy that's already coming up out of the earth all the time. You with me? What do you think's going to happen when you do that? Conventional science would say absolutely nothing, and you're crazy to think otherwise. But what he actually found with astonishing redundancy over and over again is that the water molecules in the second test tube literally rearranged into DNA. DNA formed out of the water. Why? Ultimately because the universe is alive and it's built to make life. So then this comes out last August where there was a window on the International Space Station that had plankton up in space. And the Russian scientists say that the plankton was blown up into space by air currents. Come on, dude. Right, okay, these air currents, right? Okay, and then they just kind of woof, and then the air plankton just kind of goes up through all these areas where it would have been totally killed, and it doesn't sink, and it goes all the way up, and it lands on the window. No. It formed on the window. So Montagnier has set us free, and the skeptics say, how dare this man claim that his scientific research has validity just because he has a Nobel Prize in biology? Sorry, dude, but I think he's a little more credible than you are, sitting there on the internet with a bong in one hand and your keyboard on the other hand. Not buying it. So again, let's just review this. He had 2 hermetically sealed tubes of water. 1 tube has trace DNA in it. You electrify both tubes with your 7 hertz electromagnetic field, and the water molecules rearrange into DNA in the tube. And what does this tell us? This tells us DNA seems to be a quantum effect written into the laws of physics itself. Quantum physics makes life. So forget about all those weird equations. All you need to know is it generates life. The energy around us is alive. The energy around us is conscious. And it's going to take anything and eventually turn into something alive. Even the carpet that I'm standing on, if you bombard it long enough with energy, it's going to turn into living things. And life forms arranged spontaneously out of what we would think of as non-living material. Thus, the entire universe becomes one gigantic organism. And we are all cells in that great body. Now, I mentioned the geometry that the universe is formed from. Well, we actually see traces of this geometry in the structure of DNA and protein. DNA is very small, 2 nanometers wide, and down at that level, we start to see interesting geometric patterns in DNA. Now this guy, Dr. Mark White, was the first to figure out that the DNA molecule wraps around this guy up on the left, a dodecahedron. The best way to see that is right here. Now notice there is a green line and there is a red line. Now if you look really closely, look at the red line first and start at the bottom. What do you see? The red line tilts at an angle that's exactly the same as the slope angle on the geometry. And then as you trace the two lines up, what you find out is it's as if the DNA molecule is like a wire that you wrapped around this totem pole of geometry. It wraps perfectly. Now what am I saying? Where is the geometry? No geometry. What is the geometry? It's vibration. It's a geometric vibration. Remember, we take that drop of water, we vibrate it, what happens to the sand inside? Geometry, right? DNA is a geometric vibration. DNA takes matter like the water molecules, and that geometric vibration comes in and it forces the water into that new shape that becomes a double helix. So it's all based on geometry, the same basic geometry that the whole frickin' universe is made of, thanks to these new scientific researchers that we found. So this geometry that I'm showing you right now, this is an animation of the basic different platonic solid shapes with colors and lights and all kinds of cool stuff. It's not necessarily a technically accurate description of how they phase in and out of each other geometrically, but it's very cool to look at, so why the heck not? Let's just have some fun. Let's trip out on this thing for a little while. Oh, and you guys in the back, I don't want any of the audio that's in this computer to come out when I play the videos you're going to see. So please just cut the audio if it shows up. Okay, so where do we go from here? I don't know because I just wrote this talk and I need it to tell me. Oh, here we go. Yeah, this is awesome. Not easy to pronounce, but this is a study that was an emulation of work done by Dr. Wilhelm Reich, completed by a Peruvian scientist named Pacheco on the Orgone.org website. Ultrastructural and light microscopy analysis of SAPA sand packet bions. Now what is he doing here? What's he doing? This is sand from Venezuela that he scraped and put it inside a test tube with water and then scraped off the stuff that rises to the top and looked at it under a microscope. That's it. Nothing is there that's interesting. But if you take that sand and you sterilize it, meaning you heat it up to 1,000 degrees Celsius, burning off all the impurities except for the basic SiO2, silicon dioxide, the sand is made out of, those two basic chemicals, which actually are two of the geometric phases of the nucleus. Oxygen is actually a cube. Silicon is actually the octahedron in terms of the number of protons, where the protons are the corners of the geometry. You get your basic geometries in there, you sterilize them, you sterilize the water, wait 24 hours, and what grows on top of the water in a hermetically sealed tube is lots of little critters. So all you've done is sterilize the sand and you get these things, including a plant that obviously broke on the way to the microscopic slide. Here's one leaf that broke off of one of these plants that grew. These grew in 24 hours in a supposedly dead medium of sand and water and nothing else. You see things that look like red blood cells, white blood cells. You see something that might be the beginning of like a seashell with just the soft body, and then you see other examples where the shell actually is starting to grow around the body. You see that? You see the beginning shape of a seashell there? Well, this is beach sand. It's growing what it should have to be in the ocean. This one really trips me out the most. Look at this little guy. He looks like a spiny porcupine. Where did his DNA come from, right? DNA is so complicated that if you chopped it up into individual pieces and dropped them out of a helicopter, all of those pieces would have to arrange big enough to build the entire Encyclopedia Britannica, dropping it out of the helicopter one word at a time. That's the idea of how stupid it is to think that DNA formed randomly. It's not random. It's an intelligent design. This little guy grew out of sand and water and nothing else. Why? Because when you have an ocean, you need guys like him to go around and kick ass. Okay? He's mad. He's not having a good day. Anybody gets near him, they're going to get punctured. So this is the science of heaven. This is the science of a body that we're going to have that's energetic in nature, the body that precedes the DNA, right? You have the geometry that holds the figure for DNA, but it doesn't require the DNA to be there. It just sets up the shape of the DNA that the molecules then say, oh, I see, I'm supposed to be DNA over here. So what I'm saying is that you do have a soul. There is a pure energy that is the DNA wave itself before it coalesces into matter. And that's our true essence. Now, how do we get back to that essence? This was another major awakening for me. This book, Dream Yoga and the Practice of Natural Light by Namkhai Norbu. This guy was a whistleblower on Tibetan Buddhism. He leaked the secrets that they did not want the West to know about. And what did this turn into? The Institute of Noetic Sciences read his book and read the description of people in Tibet right up to modern times ascending and reaching the rainbow body state, which means their physical body is transmuted into pure light of rainbow pinwheel colors. Ions actually sent Father Francis Tiso over to Tibet to witness the ascension of this man, Khenpo Akos, or Chos. And in fact, that's exactly what happened. He had been meditating for long enough that he actually transfigured himself into a light body, and Father Francis Tiso witnessed this happen while he was there at the monastery. And there's 160,000 documented cases of this happening in Tibet. So this is nothing new. The teachings that they were given give us the basic clues of how they got to this rainbow body state. And it's a lot simpler and yet more complex than you would think. Now, one of the most significant extraterrestrials to have come and visited us to talk about this was Padmasambhava, or the so-called second Buddha. He's also called Guru Rinpoche. And Padmasambhava, if my slides will cooperate here. Oh. We have a technical glitch, which is very unfortunate. Let's see what's happening here. Okay. Let me just see what's going on. Oh, I know it's changing. Okay. I don't know why it did that. That was a little bit frightening. But we're back and working. I loaded this onto their computer because we have two video outs. We have an HDMI and a DVI, which we need to do streaming and to see it at the same time. And I was hoping that there would be no glitches, and that got me a little scared. But hopefully we'll be fine. So, Padmasambhava did not have a mother or father, and they say that he arrived in an egg that came out of the sky. Well, that sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? No mother and father comes out of an egg from space. Interesting. He told them that he came from the cosmos. And he had remarkable abilities, including telekinesis, levitation, as soon as he arrived. His name translates as he who is born from the lotus. He's also known as Guru Rinpoche, the second Buddha. And it translates as precious guru. He studied Vajrayana Buddhism and then brought that in from India and traveled through Nepal, Bhutan, and Tibet, and eventually brought his teachings there. Now notice he seems to have a penciled-in mustache, probably because I believe he is an extraterrestrial human, and they do not naturally have facial hair, so he probably was doing this just to try to fit in. Come on, guys. And he was shown as flying around, so here he is on a lotus. And he's got some pretty trippy eyes, doesn't he? Look at that. In drug parlance, his eyes are cashed. I don't know if that's what's going on, but if you hold your eyes open for that long, they're going to get really bloodshot. Now, this is what he looked like when he hit rainbow body. This is based on eyewitness descriptions and people actually drawing it right after it happened. That's the rainbow body activation that he showed people how to do. So he brought the Buddhism in from India in the 8th century AD, and the indigenous Himalayan religion was Bon, and he had extraordinary abilities including flying, telekinesis, manifesting objects out of thin air, and telepathy. He melded the Buddhism with the indigenous Tibetan religion, and this created Nyingma sect, which is Tibetan Buddhism as we now know it. Now, he spontaneously bursts into light at the end of his life. This was a great surprise and inspiration to everyone who was there. And since that time, by following his teachings, 160,000 people have attained rainbow body, and their names are documented. The circumstances around how they did it, when they did it, who witnessed it, it's all the equivalent of heavily documented legal testimony that we would have in a court of law. The equivalent for Tibet. All 160,000 of these meticulously documented, and they even saved the little figurines of people. A lot of them have been hidden away. And the central practice, this is what interests me, how did they get to the point of reaching rainbow body? Through a practice called Dzogchen, or the Great Perfection. Now, what is that? Dzogchen is the natural primordial state of our being that we all have emanated from. The teachings and meditations that they gave are aimed at achieving this condition. And pure, all-encompassing primordial clarity is the nature of all beings. That's what Padmasambhava taught us. It is without time and it is without form, and yet it is the nature of the universe. Well, that sounds a lot like this new model, doesn't it? That Merkaba that's creating the whole universe, it's not matter and it's not time. It makes both. Well, here's this extraterrestrial guy who comes down in an egg, right? And he's telling us the same thing. Realize that this is who you are and you will achieve rainbow body. So this timeless clarity has no form of its own, and yet it is capable of perceiving, experiencing, reflecting, or expressing all form. It does so without being affected by those forms in any ultimate permanent way. It is like a mirror that reflects with complete openness, but is not affected by its reflections. So again, if you can meditate on these concepts and try to have every thought be a loving thought, as these people did, 13 years of doing that all day for the whole time, and you don't distract yourself. I mean, you get a little bit distracted, but you're basically committed to doing this practice, having every thought be a loving thought, 13 years, and boom, you're good to go. No big whoop, right? It's like, oh, we could do that. No, not in this world. So Trekcho is one of the final stages of the enlightenment process that they teach. Once you realize this nature of the universe as a mirror, you hit a state called Rigpa, and Trekcho is an advanced practice that they felt was the fastest way to achieve Rigpa. Now, this is where you release or cut through all your tensions and rigidities, so there's a lot of stretching, like yoga. Of course, yoga comes out of Buddhism. Mastering the art of contemplative visualization, meditation for hours and hours a day in a state of unity consciousness. That's how you get there. And the idea is that you focus on this shape, which is the Sanskrit vowel ah. And they actually tell you to visualize this shape and to visualize the sound or even tone the sound out loud at the same time. And they say that when you visualize this sound, that you should see a rainbow halo, like a spherical halo, shooting off of it. And that is, in fact, what the universe is being made from. It's the breath of the compassionate. It's this essence of the Word. And in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Same thing. This is the essence of that geometry, which they also showed us in the mandala, that it was the star tetrahedron. So you purify yourself of anything that is not love, you witness your karma, and you release the karma, and you forgive and dissolve all your karma until it holds no cause over you. And then at this point, your physical body is calmed to a death-like state called samadhi, where you're very ecstatic, and this is a deep state of union with your true identity that occurs on a conscious level. This then goes to another level, Togal, the final practice, where you become the essence of all that is. You actually become that essence instead of just observing it. You have now cleared all your karma, all your thoughts, because they consider thinking to be karma. That's pretty interesting. Even having a thought creates karma. You just want to become that which already is. So your identity then actually becomes the cosmic awareness, and at that point your physical body is no longer necessary because it's merged back into what it truly is. So your physical body just melts away into pure light. Pretty cool. And at that point, you become the rainbow body. So again, it's about shifting and clearing all your karma, becoming the essence of love, and you melt into the pure nature of the universe. And this rainbow body is called Jalus. Oh, we finally got the door open back there. That's great. You feel a little coolness? I don't know about you all, but I'm up here and I'm sweating. It's nice and warm up here. So there's your rainbow body. Now, what if I were to tell you that in the Law of One, it explains that the good ETs want this to happen to you, like Padmasambhava. The bad ETs will do everything possibly in their power to prevent this from happening to you. Why? Because the universe is designed so the bad guys get to feed on your negative emotions. They feed on fear, they feed on anger, they feed on stress, they feed on depression, they feed on low self-esteem. That actually is their food source. And what if I told you that there's been a battle going on in our solar system for at least 5 million years between good guys and bad guys, where the bad guys are trying to stop this from happening? What the Law of One teaches us is simple. If you can actually practice what Padmasambhava gave us, you can ascend whenever you want. Obviously, most people will never do that much work. That's like the Olympic Games of spirituality. I'm not saying you have to do that. What happens is we get these 25,000-year cycles. This is explained in the Law of One, and there's a lot of science behind it that I go into in my show and other books that I've written. There's a 25,000-year cycle, and at the end of the cycle, it's ready or not, here we come. You either are ready for fourth density, which is the next level above our own third, or you recycle and you do another 25,000 years in third density. Yikes. I don't know about you, but I'm freaking done. I want to clear that karma. I want to cut the cords, and let's just set this whole thing aside. But again, what did they say that what's the form of the the sound? It's this. Just like these scientists are now discovering. Isn't that interesting? The scientists told us ultimately it's a Merkaba, and that's exactly what they found in this research. And the Tibetans were told the same thing by Padmasambhava. And now we're getting more and more data coming in showing us that the universe is very highly populated with intelligent life. This started in May 2014. Now, this guy for a long time, God love him, was the bane of all UFO researchers. Because this is Drake, and he created the eponymous Drake equation, which basically was saying that intelligent life could have happened somewhere in our galaxy, but it's so rare that we'll never ever see it. And he's got all these really cool looking equations that he wrote, and but the point is, finally now the debunkers can no longer beat that dead horse because of things that NASA has said. These are some very astonishing statistics. For every star in the Milky Way, there is an entire galaxy in the universe. That means there's up to 400 billion galaxies out there. For every grain of sand on Earth, this is very trippy stuff. You'll probably want to rewind this if you got the streaming. There are 10,000 stars for every single grain of sand. Now, you could go outside here and just pick up a handful of sand and just watch it fall, and there's sand like that all over the Earth. And there's 10,000 stars for every grain of sand? Yes, that's what they're saying. If we estimate that 5% of the stars in the universe are sun-like, that's 500 billion of them. It's an unthinkable number. Penis? How else do I pronounce it, honestly? I don't know. Penis? Penis? Proceedings from the National Academy of Sciences. Woo, it's getting a little warm in here. Penis, conservatively estimated that 22% of these stars have an Earth-like planet with liquid water. Oh my gosh. That is a very long and girthy universe. There's so many places I could go with that. Oh my God. So here it is, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. So you can see I did not make this up. And it goes on from there. The penis shall shower us with its blessing. I can't help it. I can't help it. I'm sorry. At least 1% of all these stars in the universe have a potentially habitable Earth-like planet. That's a lot. 100 billion planets like ours. And that's only with the 1% margin that they're giving us, okay? That means there's 100 Earth-like planets in the universe for every single grain of sand in the world. And then they could all have life on them, right? Billions of people. Okay, assume only 1% of them has life on them. Well, what does that give us? Every grain of sand on Earth has a planet with intelligent life. Oh my gosh, it's just unbelievable. Then assume that on 1% of those planets, life advances to an intelligent level as it has on Earth. Again, that's probably very minor. It probably should be a lot higher than 1%. But if you take it as 1%, that means you got 10 quadrillion or 10 million billion intelligent civilizations in the universe. You apply the same math to our own local area, and you now have 1 billion planets like the Earth and 100,000 intelligent civilizations. That is quite astonishing. That means we have definitely been found. There's lots and lots and lots of people out there, and they're probably everywhere. And in the Law of One series, they estimate it as 100 million, which means you're not dealing with those 1% margins. The margins are higher. So that's pretty freaking amazing. And it's quite a mind trip that totally deflates the myth of the Drake equation. So what we now see is the so-called Goldilocks zone, too hot, too cold, just right there in the middle where it's green. And the planet size they think has to be 1 to 2 Earths. It turns out there are super Earths much larger than ours that still work just well. So that's not even true. And here is a NASA diagram of some of the current potentially habitable planets that they found that are like the Earth, that people could be living on, that we could go move to, except there's probably people already there who'd be pretty darn upset about us showing up and wanting to chemtrail and build SUVs. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want that. So there's a lot of them right nearby. We don't have to go very far. And then here you see our night sky consists of a small selection of the very brightest and nearest stars within that tiny red circle in the Milky Way. That's all the stars we see when we look at the sky. Everything else is much farther away. Now, here's another interesting thing from the article I showed you. The Earth is born 4.5 billion years ago, and the distance between that and the present day, as you can see, is only a quarter of the length of the entire universe in its life. So if you have a planet that was born 8 billion years ago, that's a significant jump ahead of the Earth. If you look at the time between the formation of that planet and the present day, that means that that planet was at our current level of intelligence and technology at the time that our planet was born. And that means that that planet could have had 3.5 billion years to develop beyond the technology that we have right now. Woo! That means that there's some folks out there that have technology that is so advanced that we can't even begin to imagine how incredibly advanced it is. So, if we only go back 5 million years, we could easily have groups that have come here that are way, 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 way ahead of how technological we are. And that is what the main focus of this talk is, and why you came here, at least why you thought you came here, until I kind of misdirected you into Tibetan Buddhism and mandalas and all this other stuff. But again, you know, you're going to get what you came here for. So what if our solar system's been inhabited for 5 million years? Well,